Hey YouTube, today I'm going to be doing a review of the Ulta collection brushes. I bought these about 2 months ago. I promised to do a review and I've been using them for a long time. I feel like I can finally talk about them. Actually, I have seven brushes to talk about. And I want to start this video by giving a little tiny bit of background. First off, I gotta tell you guys that my approach to makeup brushes in particular has definitely changed. I used to be the kind of person that would buy MAC brushes, Smashbox, Sigma, It Cosmetic, not Hakuhudo, but more expensive brushes, and I figured, okay, I'll just take good care of them. That was great in theory, but I find that as somebody that struggles keeping my skin clear, I need to make sure I use a new brush every time or wash a brush every time. And I just started realizing I wanted to find some cheaper brushes that I could just have around. Now the reason I'm telling you this is not to brag, for goodness sakes. I'm just trying to say what my background with brushes is, what I prefer, what I've used. And the reason this is so important with honestly any review you ever watch is because a person's experiences are a big factor in how they view a product. One thing I noticed with these brushes is when I went and read the reviews, because you guys know me, you know I read the reviews, a lot of people gave these 5 stars, and they're rated pretty highly on the Ulta site, at least 4.5 stars for most of them. But a lot of the reviewers were people saying that they had never used a makeup brush before. This was their first ever endeavor into makeup brushes. For me, I'm going to rate most of these around a 4, some a 3, some a 5. But the whole reason I'm saying this is so that you know when I'm talking about each one of these brushes, I'm comparing it mentally to other brushes that I've used, high-end and low-end. The other major disclaimer I want to say in this video is these brushes run between, I think it was $16 to $20 on the Ulta website. Don't ever pay that. Ulta is one of those brands that has a higher price so they can run sales. They expect you to spend a lot less than the retail price they price these at. Even right now, they're buy one get one 50% off. For me, I paid $6 each for these, and I would do it again with several of these brushes, but I don't think I'd ever pay more than $10 per brush. So keep that in mind. I do not think that you should pay $20 for Ulta collection brushes. Let's dig into the reviews. I want to start by giving a all the brushes type of analysis. So all of the brushes do come with this kind of nice shape to them. They're easy to hold. It's lighter than I thought it would be. It kind of looked a little heavy to me when I saw other people talking about these, but they're actually pretty light. They're not super light. They're just a good, pretty balanced weight, but still lighter than they look. Kind of a con with some of the brushes. They all come in packaging like this, and it kind of means they're squished into the packaging. With a lot of brushes, this won't matter at all. So with the foundation brush, no issues whatsoever. I didn't have an issue with the angled foundation brush either. It's pretty stiff and holds its shape. But for example, with the blush brush, it has a little bit of an odd shape to me. A lot of blush brushes are tapered, but this one seems to be exceptionally tapered, so that when you apply it, you get a bit of a finer line. And that's okay. You can buff that out. It's a little strange with the buffing brush. You can see that one still hasn't expanded. And again, I've had these for two months, so I've been expecting them to take on a regular shape, but it doesn't quite seem to be happening with all of the brushes. Alright, let's dig into the brushes brush by brush. I'm going to start with the foundation brushes. I'm also going to show you guys applying each one of these so you can see how they work. So the first foundation brush is going to be your regular standard dome shape foundation brush. This is just the flat kind of foundation brush that you use to paint on makeup. And then I'm also going to use the angled foundation brush. A lot of people seemed surprised that this is smaller, and I kind of was too. This is smaller than you would expect it to be, but it does work really well for actually getting into all of the crevices. I'm going to go ahead and do half my face in each one of these, and I'm going to be using the Matte and Poreless Fit Me foundation. So using this foundation brush, you can see it's not streaky. It came out pretty nice. I do think this is a pretty good quality foundation brush. It gets done everything that I want it to, but I will tell you guys that as a general rule for myself, I usually follow that with a really light usage of the Beauty Blender just to get everything absolutely perfect. Obviously this is not necessary, but this is just how I apply my makeup. And then I'll use the angled foundation brush on the other side. One thing I do really like about this brush is that it's a good size in order to be able to get right up under your eyes. I feel like you have a lot of control with this brush because of its size. I honestly think both of these brushes are just fine and do the job well. They just seem to run a little bit on the small side. For example, here's a Smashbox foundation brush. They're just a little bit smaller, but they still work just fine. The only comment I would add on both of these is that this seems to be a little better for a lighter coverage foundation, whereas this seems to be better with a fuller coverage foundation. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and use the powder brush along with some Laura Mercier translucent setting powder. I do like this brush. I think it is a pretty nice and soft brush. It's very comfortable to use, which is something you do want with using a powder brush. Overall, I do like this brush. It has a little bit of the shape issue going on with it where it's a little bit squished out in my opinion, and you can really see that compared to this IT Cosmetics Heavenly Looks powder brush. This is a dome shape, whereas this has its own unique shape to it. But in comparing these, they're not bad. It's a good size. It is also a little bit smaller in that it is thinner. It's not quite as soft as my IT Cosmetics brush, but it's not bad. It is still a very soft brush. I'm going to go ahead and use the contour bronzer brush along with my old and beat up Anastasia Beverly Hills contour kit, because I feel like a lot of people probably picked this up in all of the sales that have been going on. Now this brush is squished down, but it kind of benefits it. My problem with this brush is that it is too soft for what I consider contour applications. You end up getting a really light coverage, which works well for bronzing, but for contouring, not so much. And I don't think that it blends out very well. It's a little bit awkward to blend. And it's certainly not going to be something that you can use for nose contouring. It's just not at all the right brush for that. Way too soft, not small enough, wouldn't work for that purpose. To compare it to the Sculpting Brush from Real Techniques, for example, you can see this is a lot more stiff. It'll allow you a lot more blending, a lot more control over your contour, whereas this is just really, really flimsy for a contour brush. Again, it's fine for bronzing. I don't like it for a contour brush. And then we will use the blush brush. This one is the one that I already mentioned, has a little bit of that squished issue going on. I'm going to go ahead and use a really light neutral blush today. I'm going to use the Becca Songbird shade from, I don't know what palette this is, from the Blushed with Light palette. This brush kind of has the biggest issue with actual application. I'll go ahead and show you what I mean. So when you apply the blush, you get the shape that this brush looks like. You get kind of a rectangular line. Now, it's not terrible. The thing is, this doesn't really blend it out very well at all. Because of that issue and the fact that it's not the best at blending out, you don't want to stop here. You're going to need something for blending. And before I move on from talking about the blush brush, here's the Ulta collection compared to the IT Cosmetics brush and then the Real Techniques blush brush. The tapered shape works really well with this brush because it is fully rounded. It blends out well. Angled blush brushes are another option. This one is a wonderful blush brush. This one is just, it's just not my favorite blush brush. But here's what redeems those brushes, kind of. I'm going to talk about the buffing brush next. This is actually made for buffing out powders, which means you can use it for buffing on a powder foundation, or you can use it to buff out your blush and contour that you did not love the application of. I do like this brush. I think it's excellent for blending everything together. What I would say is if you're going to pick up the angled brush or the blush brush, don't even try to not get this as well, because while those don't apply ideally in my opinion, this fixes everything. The last brush I'm going to talk to you guys about is the Kabuki Brush, and I actually really enjoy this brush. This is fantastic for finishing everything. If you're going to add in a finishing powder, this will help you do it. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Ambient Diffuse Light from Hourglass. Did I just say that really southern? I feel like I did. I definitely do recommend this brush. I think it's really good. It's better than the Real Techniques Kabuki brush, which I honestly don't like. It's one of few Real Techniques brushes that I've been a little bit disappointed in. I don't like the shape of this. I think that this is the perfect shape for finishing powders and blending everything together. And to show you guys another comparison, here it is up against the Too Faced Kabuki brush. The Too Faced one is a little bit softer, but in terms of size and shape, they're very similar. Alright guys, so that is my quick look using all these face brushes. I'll go ahead and say that my top recommendation is the Kabuki brush. I think it is a really great addition to your collection, especially if you don't already have a Kabuki brush that you love. I like the buffing brush a lot. I think it's an excellent buffing brush. I really enjoy both of the foundation brushes. I love this one for light coverage, this one for medium to full coverage. I think these are both high quality brushes. Then I like the powder brush. I can't say it's my favorite powder brush. It's probably the least reached for powder brush in my collection, but it is still soft. It does still work. I would personally pass on the contour brush and the blush brush. I just don't think they apply that well. I don't really see a reason to absolutely need another brush to fix things. You should be able to pull in another brush to refine things, but you should still have a pretty decent canvas you're working with after your application of contour and blush. So I would say pass on these, but really these are the only two that I don't particularly like. Overall, I think that if you guys are doing upcoming Christmas shopping or you see some amazing Ulta deals, because you know they're going to have more of them, yeah, I would grab these for $10 or under. I do definitely think they're worth it for that price. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and you know what to do if you did. Please give this video a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.